Hi, I'm Dr. Rahman and I'm going to walk you through on how to analyze your qualitative data. So for those of you who have done qualitative research, you know that qualitative data does not include numbers. They are not stuff that you can count or do statistical analysis on. Generally, you would have collected a voluminous amount of data, and they're largely unstructured and sometimes difficult to make sense of. So my advice would be for you to look at your data sooner rather than later. It is important for you to choose the best method to analyze your data. Thorne in 2000 characterized data analysis as the most complex phase of qualitative research and one that receives the least thoughtful discussion in the literature. As I've said in my previous lecture, it would make your life easier if you break up your data into smaller bits before you start your analysis. You will not get very far if you will start off without any form of data organization. So, what comes to mind when you're presented with data? Qualitative research can generate a huge amount of data. Don't panic, stay focused, and start looking for any patterns or connections and meaningful relationships in your data sets. There are two main approaches to qualitative data analysis: the inductive approach or the bottom-up logic. It is not based on any predetermined theory or framework and is concerned with the generation of new theory from the data. The researcher begins by collecting relevant data to his research interests and looks for patterns in the data, working to develop a theory that could explain all those patterns. One specific example of inductive approach is grounded theory, where theory is generated through the analysis of data via a systematic process of coding, categorizing, and sampling. The deductive approach involves analyzing qualitative data based on an existing practical and theoretical knowledge that is predetermined by the researcher, starting with a compelling theory and testing the hypotheses that emerge from the theory and its implications with data, moving from a more general level to a more specific one. You can easily apply this approach if you have a fair idea about the likely responses that you might get. Here are two examples on the inductive and deductive approaches that you might like to read later. On a lighter note, my family and I are big fans of Sherlock Holmes. He was the best detective in the world. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was the person behind the creation of Sherlock Holmes, and all he equipped Holmes with was the power of induction. So similarly, when we carry out research, we need to form a process of our own when observing situations. So we need to ask questions along the way using our power of inductive reasoning. Next, we have the types of qualitative data analysis. Firstly, content analysis. This is the most common type of analysis used in qualitative studies. It is a systematic coding and categorizing approach used to evaluate patterns within the content or sources of information. Thematic analysis is somewhat similar to content analysis. It is also a method for identifying, analyzing, and reporting patterns or themes within data. You will note here that it is labeled differently. This is because thematic analysis is not considered an entity on its own, even though it is widely used in qualitative research. The main difference between the two is the possibility of quantification of data in content analysis. It allows you to identify the frequency with which an idea is shared or spoken about, like the number of times Boris Johnson is mentioned on Twitter. The other types of qualitative data analysis includes narrative analysis. This focuses on using the stories and experiences shared by people to understand the underlying events and outcomes to answer the research questions. Discourse analysis is about analyzing the language in its social and cultural context in the day-to-day environment. Framework analysis is useful to have as it provides a systematic model for managing and mapping the data. And finally, the grounded theory, where after extensive evaluation or examination, a general hypothesis or theory could emerge to explain for all the patterns. Here are the 5 steps to qualitative data analysis. Firstly, reading the data intensively to familiarize yourself with it. It's important that you need to arrange or organize your data. You will have to convert or transcribe the data into a text format. You have to read them thoroughly and organize the data systematically and according to the research objectives. As you read, you must identify and document the text passages that share the same code, patterns, or themes that you've noticed with the same concept. You can then export the data into a spreadsheet or manually type in the data, or you can choose a computer-assisted qualitative data analysis tool. Secondly, you need to build the coding frame. A coding frame is a guide or the record of the codes and criteria that you have created, used to identify and classify observations in a qualitative research. It contains the definitions of concepts and categories and the rules used to single out the observations associated with them in raw data. In a separate file, I would advise that you document these codes and their meanings and short descriptions of them. Always check for drifts from the initial definitions. The third step is to code the data collected. Coding is a good way to compress data and is the process of labeling words or phrases and organizing data to identify important and recurring themes and the relationships between them. You need to do this line by line, and after assigning codes to the data, they can then be categorized and patterns identified to gain in-depth insights into the data that will help make informed decisions. The next step will be to analyze the coded data. Linking of data to the research idea and back to other data enables you to organize, examine, and analyze them in a structured way, for example, by examining relationships between codes. A theme analyzes the meaning of words and sentence structures, captures something important in relation to the overall research question, and appear to be significant concepts that link substantial portions of the data together. It allows you to understand the individual's experience in an accurate and actionable way. Finally, presenting the results. A storyline should be developed, results presented in response or solution to the problem, using best examples of raw data to demonstrate an analytical point so that it's not just a flat descriptive account. This is just a summary of what we have discussed. This is a quick example of a study I did on the patient's perceptions and experiences of brachioplexus surgery in Cambodia. This is to show you how the raw data can be used to illustrate the codes, categories, and themes. As you familiarize yourself with the text of the transcript, you pick up phrases or words that might be relevant from as many different perspectives as possible. For example, here I have picked up what the patient said. I wasn't sure about what to think because before I had surgery, the doctor told me that it would take a long time. And after I had surgery, I was told to wait 2 years for the results. You can then apply labels or codes to these phrases. In this example, I've coded them as uncertainties of recovery time and not knowing what to expect. So labels or codes could refer to substantive things, for example, particular behaviors, or their values, for example, those that inform certain statements, or even their emotions like happiness or frustrations. Coding aims to classify all of the data so that you can compare them systematically with each other and with other parts of the data set. They are then organized into categories and finally themes. A theme captures something important. In relation to the overall research question, a concept that links substantial portions of the data together. So in any study, themes are only considered final when all of the data has been read through. And it is important for us researchers to scrutinize our coding to ensure the credibility of our research findings. So in conclusion, it is imperative to choose your data analysis methods carefully. Data analysis is an important part of your research. Inaccurate results will hamper the authenticity of the research, and a strong analysis will ensure useful findings that are insightful and actionable. Here is a list of some studies that you might like to look at. Thank you.